you can't be too close to power when you're a woman. But Catherine managed by accepting not to get the title official regent. She's going to call herself and make everyone else call her Queen Mother. And that's a title that shows where her power comes from, motherhood. It explains why with Elizabeth there's so much tensions, because she doesn't understand the type of queen that Elizabeth is. She doesn't understand that Elizabeth gets her power through herself. She doesn't need to be a mother. She doesn't get it. She just doesn't get it. And that's why tensions are going to, become more and more intense between them.
Hello and welcome to the British History Channel with me, Philippa Lacey Brewell. Today I am talking to Dr. Estelle Paranque about two powerful contemporaries of the 16th century, Queen Elizabeth I of England and Catherine de Medici, the Queen Mother of France, their relationship and how it affected the European politics of the time. Our discussion today is based on Estelle's latest book, Blood, Gold and Fire, which is a dual biography of the two women. Estelle is an assistant professor and lecturer in early modern history at Northeastern University in London. Her work focuses on Anglo-French relations during Elizabeth I's reign and monarchical representations during the early modern period. Her works include her PhD, which she published as a monograph in 2018, titled Elizabeth I of England Through Valois Eyes, Power, Representation and Diplomacy in the Reign of the Queen, 1558 to 1588. Now, members of my British History Patreon club have put their questions to Estelle. Their questions will make up the extended ad-free version of this episode. If you're not already a patron and you would like to be, then you can find out what benefits you get, there are plenty, of being a patron at www.patreon.com/British History. One of the benefits is you get to put your questions to future guests. Estelle, I really, really enjoyed your book. And
It means a lot.
well, I'm so glad that you said you made time as well in your holiday to speak to me. And I have to say, I'm really grateful. This is not supposed to sound condescending, but to historians like you who give people like me who of course interested in the Tudor period, the context in which the Tudor period, the English focused Tudor period actually took place in, because I think that does get lost. And of course, your perspective, you give, well, the wider context, the European, obviously the Anglo-French relations of it. So I've given everyone a bit of a brief introduction to you already, but in your own words, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work? But also, I'm intrigued as to how you got interested in Tudor history.
Okay. So I'm Dr. Estelle Paranque, and I've been working in academia for 12 years now. So it's been a long journey. I have a PhD in history, and I've always loved the 16th century, the 17th century, the 18th century. I've always loved that type of period. But at first, I didn't have a strong interest in the Tudors. It came later in my life. Why I say later? It came at 17. So what I'm saying is, like, I'm not from a childhood a Tudor lover. First of all, because I'm French, and that we don't really talk about the Tudors in France, or as much, from a young age. You would hear like the story about Henry VIII and his 6 wives, but I have to tell you that it completely get me like no interest whatsoever. I was just like, what is this bloke with so many wives? And I didn't really pay attention. But what happened was, my mother has always been a lover and a craver for history, and she took me from a very young age to the castles of La Loire, the Versailles, and all these castles, and it's when I got really interested in the kings and queens. I started learning all the names and starting to understand the genealogy and why it was Francis I who became king, and why it was not someone else, and his mother, Louise of Savoy. And then I move on to Henry II and Catherine de Medici, who had such a dark legend, and I'm sure we'll discuss more about that. But it was something that I was really like, everyone hates her, and I was just like, okay, like, that's interesting. You're a kid, you're just taking in. And then I moved to university, and for my university I did English studies. So I didn't do history because my dad was like, what are you going to be, a historian? So
well,
actually, but I made my way through, because the deal was like, first of all, get another language, be good at it, and then do whatever you want. So so I said, okay. So I did English studies, and English studies meant that you have linguistics, translation, and you have literature, and you have history. And then I learned about the Tudors. And the one that really got me 100%, she got my heart from when I was 17 years old, still has it, is Elizabeth I. I was just drawn to the story of a powerful woman who was ruling on her own for half a century, almost, like, 44 years, but like, and I was fascinated by the fact that it's obviously a very misogynistic, patriarchal society, but I became more and more fascinated by the fact of what's going on in France. And does she have any kind of equal? And then I realized, oh my God, she ruled at the same time that Catherine de Medici rose to power. And so in my PhD, I got fascinated by Elizabeth I of England through Valois eyes, because the truth is, in France, we really pay a lot of attention to the Bourbons, right? Like, so from Henry IV to with the 16th, which it does make sense, because in between we have obviously with the 13th, Louis the 14th, Louis the 15th, and you have Louis the 14th being the Sun King, being this. I mean, he's fascinating. He's really interesting to look at, because the ego is unbelievable. You would be top one in terms of the kings and queens with big ego, and so the Valois kings instead, especially the last Valois, so Francis II, Charles IX, and Henry III, are completely demonized by the society, by history, to construct a new type of history and give glory to the Bourbons, to the new dynasty. And what fascinated me was wait a minute, those last Valois are exactly the kings that Elizabeth is going to have to deal with for 30 years. And it does change the dynamic of a queen when she has to deal with different, let's face it, she had for a few months Henry II, then she had for 18 months or 17 months Francis II, then she had Charles IX, but it was not just Charles IX, it was his mother, Catherine de Medici, for quite some time. And then there was this woman, Catherine de Medici, who kept being in the picture, of powerful people. And then obviously you had Henry III. And their stories with Elizabeth is a bit complicated. It started really badly and ended up with an unexpected friendship. And it's when I did all this research that I realized how crucial they were as well for Elizabeth's reign. And that, as you said, when you give the context, there's no country, France, England, Spain, whichever country you look at, you can't just look at what's going on in the country, because all the reaction, all what's going on is going to be a reaction to what's going on somewhere else. They don't live alone, some people made lots of compared Henry VIII, with Brexit, and he was the first Brexiter because he broke with Rome. But that's much more complicated than that. And even if he broke with Rome, he didn't break with everyone else, and he tried so hard to keep good relations. And when you look at Elizabeth, the Protestant queen, who have via media a solution, trying to find a way to basically make everyone happy to some extent, especially at the beginning of her reign. I agree that after that, the policies are going to shift. But when you look at her, she's still trying very hard to be in a very good relationship with her neighbors. It's really rare when they stop trade. It's really rare when they go a full-blown war. And that's because wars is not good for kings and queens. It never is. It always creates it creates too many problems for them. Do you see what I mean? I think it's quite really important to see, to understand that context, to really fully understand Elizabeth and the Tudors in general, because it's the same with Henry VIII, with Francis I and Charles V. You can't understand Henry VIII without understanding what type of kings were Francis I and Charles V. So I think that's why I try to do in all my books. So Elizabeth I, Through Valois Eyes, and my latest one, Blood, Fire and Gold. So yes, that's me.
You do, and you do it brilliantly. I think as well, you're introducing Catherine de Medici to people who are probably very au fait with Elizabeth I, and we'll go on to Mary Queen of Scots, who kind of makes up this triangle of queens, European queens, contemporary to each other, maybe a little bit later on. But so my audience are probably very familiar with Elizabeth, and less so, I imagine, with Catherine de Medici. So can you just give us a little bit of background to Catherine? Of course, that's not a French name.
Yeah.
De Medici.
Well, Medici,
it's a famous one.
It's exactly. But Catherine, it's very more interesting. Catherine de Medici is the daughter of a French woman, Madeleine de la Tour d'Auvergne. And so she is half French, half Italian. But her father is obviously Lorenzo II, Duke of Urbino. So he's Lorenzo II of Medici. So from a very a powerful family, but also a family that is whose reputation is stained by lots of scandals, they have lots of enemies. That's how her father died. Her father died because he was trying to defend Florence. They're not. I mean, they're feared in many ways, but they're also loved by other people. They have their enemies, and they're just a powerful family that for Catherine de Medici, she had to deal with a very sad fate, I would say, because obviously, so her mother died of consequences of childbirth, probably. So really, I think it's 10 days later after Catherine was born, then she lost her father 3 weeks after that, in a battle where he's trying to defend his city. But the Medici are more than just one woman and one man. And Catherine is going to be spending time with her very powerful family. So her aunties are going to look after her, but she's going to lose her auntie. Then she's going to lose her grandmother. So it's a childhood marked by death. Mm-hmm. And it is important to remember, because you cannot, some people say, oh, but we shouldn't put some psychology into that. But you can't remove it. You can't you can't understand someone's decision later on and it's a same thing for us, all of us. I mean, we can work or not in our baggage, but we all have a baggage, and we all have a past, and we all have something that happened to us and that made us or broke us, because and you're broken, but you're still trying to go forward, and you don't really understand why you're broken. At that time, obviously, they didn't have spaces to have discussions where they could discuss their past, try to heal from it. So I do understand that we're in a different time and place. However, forgetting that Catherine's childhood is marked by death means that you completely do not understand her teenage years and her adult life. And I'm going to come to this. So then she was with her, with the Pope, who was her uncle, and he was protecting her. And he was protecting her, but he was also using her as a pawn for political ambitions or political alliances. And I'm not saying using in a bad way. It's what men did in the past. It's what some men still do today in other countries or whatever. You still have this idea that women are some type of property, and it's still obviously that is wrong, but that's how people operated at that time. And some were really benevolent in the way that they wanted the best things for their daughters or their nieces or their wives or sisters or whatever. Maybe not their wives, but you see, their sisters and stuff. And so but others where it was really just about them. For the Pope, I would say that it was a deal that he concluded with Francis I that would protect his niece as well as protect his political alliance with France. He obviously wanted a political alliance with France because Charles V started, invading parts of Italy. There's a massive war between France and Charles V and Italy, and the Pope chose to side with France on this, but in a way that he has to be careful. And you always have to understand as well, like the political alliances, allegiances always shift. And sometimes they shift, month after month, and sometimes year after year, and it's very hard to keep up. What we know is that in 1533, Catherine de Medici was married to Francis I's second son, Henry. And you have this 13-year-old girl who had spent all her life in Italy, family from family members dying one after another. You need to remember that. Then she has kind of like some safety with her uncle, but he's the Pope, so he's a target, and he's someone like, and he's probably not someone who gave her lots of reassurance and lots of love and care, all this type of things. He was thinking about the survival of the Medici, the survival of himself as well, quite frankly. And you have Catherine, who is sent to France. She knows that obviously her mother is French, so it's part of her heritage as well. So, but she's given to another family, and as the wife of someone. She's 13, he's 13. Well, I guess on that she was lucky, because you have lots of 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old, given to very old men for political alliances, and it's absolutely horrible for them, where they just don't want to go, or they feel like it's not in their best interest. Well, here there's a match between two teenage people, and Catherine fell in love with Henry, like probably from the very beginning. But Henry didn't. Henry was already had a tutor who was also someone teaching him everything about sex. It's Diane de Poitiers. She's 17 years older than him, if not 20, like about that gap. And she has a total control on the young teenager, absolute control over him. And Catherine realized very early on that what's going on. And it kind of broke her heart. The things that's going to save Catherine is that it's Francis I. Francis I is going to be fond of her. First of all, she's going to try really hard to be very good at French. And I believe that maybe if she had an accent, I don't know, obviously, who am I to talk to people about accents, right? I have my own French accents. But for Catherine, I think that even if she had an accent, an Italian accent, she was still extremely intelligent and mastering French really well. Like I don't see her being, it's not like you have other queens where the language is a barrier for some time during their, when they arrive in the new country. And obviously she was not meant to be queen. She was not meant to be queen, like Elizabeth I. Elizabeth I, when you think about it, she was not meant to be queen. There was like two other people in the line, and honestly, how tragic it is but it's good. I mean, like, I'm quite happy, but how tragic is it that we have like Edward VI, who's so young and dies so young? He should have had a dynastic alliance, a marriage, have children, and that would have completely changed the shape of the country today, and of history. But it's not what happened. So you have Catherine Elizabeth with similar kind of background, Elizabeth being declared a bastard at 3 years old, the stain of the reputation of her mother, and the fact that she's, taken away from court. It's not exactly the same thing, but you do have like similarities in their upbringing that is quite noticeable. And especially when you read my book, it's what the first part is telling you. Like, it's really trying to show you the similarities of their upbringing and how they played the same cards, being humble, being obedient, and understanding their place very early on. So Catherine, Henry, his second son, but his brother, another Francis, is going to die. And it's going to mean that Catherine and Henry are Dauphin, Dauphine of France, so the heir to the throne. But there is no children yet. And it's causing a panic. And we know that Henry can have children. He has other mistresses, not just Diane de Poitiers is like the one who is the ultimate favorite. Like there will be no one else who come close to that type of power over him. However, he does sleep around because, you know, princes and kings, it's what they do. And he does have children with other women. And so there's the question of, there's almost a question of, maybe there's a problem with Catherine. And to secure the line, should we remove Catherine?
Right.
And Catherine is going to like hear all these rumors about her marriage. And she's going to be really proactive. Again, it's in my book, but she's going to go and talk to Francis I and say she accepts. She plays the game so well. She said she accepts that the repudiation, the humiliation of a divorce, if it's for what's best for him. And because they have such a close relationship, he's going to be extremely touched by this, what appears as self-sacrifice. I think you can never know. We'll never know. But I can give you my own opinion on this because of all the letters I've read about her. I can see how her brain like kind of was working on making, you know, decisions. I think she knew that he would never let it happen, and that being super humble, obedient, and show like self-sacrifice would only reinforce his feelings that she was a great person and the right person to be. So obviously he said, like, no one is going to divorce you, you're never going to be. And you have to remember as well that she's playing a card where it's a new family now. She feels extremely close to Francis I. He's probably like a father figure himself. And possibly she's ready to renounce all of it. Again, losing everything.
That's what I was just thinking with what you said earlier about her being passed from family to family. She feels like this is it now, I can settle in. And then
he's like, no, you stay. But obviously there's a problem. And for Diane de Poitiers, who is the ultimate mistress, it's not in her interest that Henry divorced Catherine, because what if he found like a new princess that is more attractive, less obedient, doesn't stay in her place, and has something against Diane? Do you know, like, so she's like, shit, I can't have that. I really like this chubby girl over there. She's quite quiet, and I can completely like walk all over her. She never does anything. No, we need to keep that one. So here we have like something that always made me cringe, and is the fact that Diane is going to give advice on sexual advice to Catherine, and to a point where she's even going to sometimes prepare Henry when he can finish himself in Catherine and have, children. It worked. But can you imagine the absolute humiliation that Catherine had to endure with someone she loved? She loved Henry. So she knew he didn't love her. And yet she had to accept all this humiliation. And she did. She did, because in many ways she didn't have much of the choice. Once she has her children, she has a son, and she has a daughter, and she has another son, daughters. Like she has 10 children. They have 10 children together. Not 7 of them all gonna go through, like, are gonna go up to adulthood. It's amazing at that time. But that is where, like, you have Catherine becoming a mother. And it's where, like, I want people to understand her past, to understand what type of mother she's going to be. She finally has another family, blood family of her own. Because Henry is not family, like, he's not blood related. Francis is not blood related. She has children now that are half hers. Do you see what I mean? Like this. And this blood thing is quite really important for her because she has no one else. And actually, the one she has, like, she has a cousin, Cosimo, that she's going to talk to a lot later on. and she's very close to her Italian relatives. And I think it's because of this blood relation that she feels and she craves. But with her children, it's even stronger. What she also realized is that she becomes the mother of future kings and probably future queens. And that changes, again, the dynamic. That changes her status. And she's going to completely like work so hard on that status, and do things that are that no one had done before. Like she's when Charles is going to become king, Charles IX, he's 9 years old. There's no, you can't be too close to power when you're a woman. But Catherine managed by accepting not to get the title official regent. She's going to get the title of gouvernante, so governor of France, and she's going to then play that card that I think is really, really smart. She's going to call herself and make everyone else call her Queen Mother. And that's a title that shows where her power comes from, motherhood. And it's very important for her because like it explains why with Elizabeth there's so much tensions, because she doesn't understand the type of queen that Elizabeth is. She doesn't understand that Elizabeth gets her power through herself. She doesn't need to be a mother. For Catherine, it's absolutely, she doesn't get it. She just doesn't get it. And that's why tensions are going to, become more and more intense between them, probably because of that.
I mean, it's the exact polar opposites: motherhood, virginity.
Exactly. So, well, virginity or single. Like I don't want to go down that road because I still don't buy the complete virgin queen. I never did. It was created in the 1580s. It was created to make her like to end all the marriage proposals and make her like this, to glorify her. But was she or was she not is not even the question. The question is, she's a queen recognized in her own right. She's a daughter of a king. She's ruling without any other man. Like, and I don't buy the bullshit about having a privy council. Everyone else had a privy council, and you don't tell that Francis I was not ruling because he had a privy council. If you don't have a privy council, you're a tyrant. It has nothing to do with ruling. It's just how it worked. You needed to have advisors around you. Anyway, Elizabeth is the one who called the shots, and when she listens to Cecil, when she listens to Walsingham, when she listens to Leicester, she makes it because she agrees with them. In the end, she's the one who made the rules, but she had to listen to them, and sometimes they had good ideas. So, why not listen to them? But yes, you have like polar opposite: Catherine the mother of kings, mother of queens, mother of duchesses, mother, grandmother as well. It's a dynasty that is going to come through her. And you have Elizabeth, the optimal single woman who doesn't who doesn't buy into this patriarchal society, and who thinks it's way too risky. And it's true, because if you get power through yourself, through your own right, you don't need to be the mother of a king to get more power. It actually creates more risks for you. What if you do die in childbirth? What if you suffer the pain of losing your children and your child? I mean, it just didn't make any sense for Elizabeth to go down that route, I think.
Of course, Elizabeth had seen time and time again that as soon as there's an heir stated, then there's rival factions, and I think she was trying to avoid that.
Exactly. Well, then people were saying, well, but if you have your own children, then it removes that. But I think because it makes things clearer. But I think for Elizabeth, it was never. It was just too risky. Also, it meant obviously being married. So who do you choose? Do you choose another prince, a foreign prince? And then what? If you die in childbirth, should the foreign prince take over your country? So are you just selling out your country? The second thing is okay, you marry nobility, so then you create factions. You favoring one noble family over the others. That creates rivalry, that creates potential rebellions. But to be fair, whatever you do, there's a problem. And she choosing not to have not to marry, not to have children, has created problems on their own. But at least it was in her own terms.
There was no perfect solution.
No, there was no.
So when did Elizabeth and Catherine's paths first cross?
So you have the rise. It's why I thought was so interesting. You definitely have the rise of the two queens at the same time. So in 1558, you have Mary I who died, and Elizabeth is becoming Queen of England. At that time, you have Henry II on the throne until the 10th of July 1559. So you have Catherine de Medici as consort, but she already played a massive role in the loss of Calais. So it becomes more and more, it becomes clearer that Catherine is more intelligent than people thought. And even Henry II became closer to his wife at that point. Not in a romantic way, because Diane was there and Diane is the love of his life. But in a way where he was like, oh, but actually Catherine is definitely not stupid. She made good decisions, and there's like this trust and partnerships between them that is growing. And unfortunately, when he died, that goes away, obviously. So then you have Francis II, and here we have a very difficult time for Catherine and Elizabeth. You have Francis II, who's married to Mary Stuart, and I know we want to discuss this a bit more, the third queen who played a huge part into their relationship. And here, Mary Stuart annoyed both queens. Well, she did on different levels. For Francis II and Mary Stuart kept using the coat of arms and titles of England. That really pissed off Elizabeth. And Catherine realized that the Guises were absolutely taking over her son. So she managed to get, in the Privy Council talking and giving advice to her son, but he was not primarily listening to her. He really loved his mom, but he was so in love with Mary Stuart. She was in total control over him. And I think she saw Mary Stuart as a second Diane, like the type of woman. And we know that Diane and Mary were close. Mary Stuart really, really admired Diane de Poitiers. She didn't admire Catherine. I think we have the same type of women, the beautiful ones, the charming ones who are absolutely taking over the men they're with, right? And so you have so Catherine saw that, couldn't say anything, still advising her son the best she could, but trying not to interfere too much, because again, she knew her place. But in December 1560, fate struck again. Francis II died. Awful on a personal level. I mean, you have to understand, like Catherine just, with all we said about death, her life being marked by death. The death of her husband, he's 40, he's not that old, like they're in the prime age kind of thing, and he died. And then leaving her also like kind of in a difficult position with young, children, well, youngish, you see what I mean? And then Francis II died. What a crush. I mean, even if it's in a way, it's a relief in terms of political power, it's not a relief on a personal level. She's crushed. But it meant to get rid of Mary Stuart, to knock down a bit the Guises, who are still going to grow in power anyway, but she is a bit more in control of that. And she really played really well. There's a power play between them that is very interesting in 1560s, early 1560s. And then you have Elizabeth and Catherine being almost at the same level, because Charles is too young to be ruling. Catherine has managed to get everyone more or less on board with Queen Mother, governor, and shifting and doing what she wants. And here we have two queens where Elizabeth wants to prove to everyone that she's not this, young, stupid young queen, just 25, late 20s, not smart enough or whatever. And she's going to make a mistake. She's going to take on Catherine. She's going to be involved in the first religious civil war in 1562. She's going to provide help to the Huguenots. And it's the first battle. It's the first battle of the queens, where I call it almost a Queen's War, because it's a power play between them. And that time, Catherine won. It's the only time she's going to, because there's something about Elizabeth that I absolutely love and adore. she always learns her lessons. So the first time around, you see it with Thomas Seymour, you see it with like Mary the First, you see it like she understood really, really quickly. Maybe not quick enough. She always like, she can put herself in a situation where she shouldn't be in. But once she get out of it, she doesn't make the same mistake twice. And it's the same with Catherine. I think she completely underestimated Catherine. Please, for all the details, get my book, because it's absolutely brilliant, the power play that it's between them, and how Catherine is going to play Elizabeth. And Elizabeth then understood, okay, I underestimated you. You're not, you're far from being stupid. And then she's going to play Catherine for over a decade, promising her, yes, I will marry one of your sons. No, I won't. Yes, I will. No, I won't. Yes, I will. And Catherine buying into that. And you see that Catherine is absolutely determined to, and she says it, she said, I'm determined to make her like change her mind. Absolutely ridiculous. She would never make it, it would never happen. And I think Elizabeth knew from the beginning that would never happen. But it was quite interesting to keep the French as ally, as like on board on everything. And it helped Elizabeth do whatever she wanted at the same time. It's so funny because, as there's this third queen that plays a huge part into their relationship. And it's so funny because when Mary Stuart really annoys Elizabeth, and when she's then later on imprisoned in England, you see that the French are like, well, that surely you can't do that. And Elizabeth is a bit like, well, you want to marry me, right? Like, so surely you should not criticize what I'm doing. Like, that's not the best. She doesn't say it that way, but when you really read through the lines of the letters, it's basically what Elizabeth is saying. She's like, well, actually, is what are you telling me what to do when you really want my hand? Like, you should be pursuing me. And I think it's extremely clever from Elizabeth.
Because you mentioned in the book as well, Elizabeth's reasons for not marrying. I think, is it 3 sons in the end? Catherine ends up we talk about women as pawns in the marriage market, but Catherine put forward 3 sons for Elizabeth over time. And her reasoning, wasn't her reasoning for the first rejection that he was too young for her? And clearly then the other 2 are going to be too young. And yet every time Catherine has hope that Elizabeth will renege this time. And does that speak back to that inability to understand that Elizabeth really, really isn't actually going to look for power through a marriage and sons?
And also what you have to remember is that, so when she offers first Charles in 1564, so it's very early on, it's after the Queen's War. It's really right after the Queen's War, because what I call the Queen's War is the dispute between, Elizabeth is involved in the first religious civil wars, basically giving money and weapons to the Huguenots and trying to make plans. She received them at court. She's being really naughty. I quite love it. Being really naughty and being a really pain in the ass for Catherine de Medici. Catherine de Medici is saying, what the fuck are you doing, women? I'm sure she was like fuming. And Catherine, I love that. Catherine lost her temper so many times. Elizabeth did as well, but not in letters. Elizabeth would do it during audiences. She threw a slipper to Walsingham's face. I love it. I think he deserved it. I don't know what he did, but I'm with Elizabeth in this. I think it's super annoying. I'm sorry, men. I'm just in general, obviously. But what I'm saying is that Catherine lost her temper in letters, which I find it reminds me a bit of me when I write an email and I'm like, and I don't control myself, and then I hit send. I'm like, oh shit, it's definitely my Catherine.
Isn't that great source for you and for you then to translate it to us in a book that I know we get the raw emotion of Catherine.
It's brilliant. I loved it. It what makes her so human. It's what helped me bring her back to life. I can almost imagine her. There's some lines like, I can imagine her, what she would be saying. It's absolutely brilliant. But so at the end of this war, where what I call a war, is Catherine is like, okay, fine. Like I have a single woman across the channel. I have a son. He's, completely under my control, because it's what's happening, right? What Catherine is trying to do is herself marrying Elizabeth in many ways, because she was in control of her son. Charles was absolutely under he's going to grow out a little out of it. Like he's going to try, like in to be like, I'm the king after all, and she's gonna be like, yeah, fine, but do this, man, like do as I say, please, because you know shit and I know better. So the dynamic between Catherine and her son is very, very interesting. But so in 1564, you have a 13-year-old boy, and Elizabeth is like 29 or something. Like she's gonna be. Oh no, she's just done. Yeah, she's 31. So there's this. What am I supposed to do with that one? But what happens like later on when she tries again, so she tries again with Charles in 1569. So Elizabeth 36, and she says no. But then she presents Henry the Third, who's going to be Henry the Third, and then Elizabeth, he's more attractive. So young but yummy. So, and she shows a more. She shows an interest that he's going to shut down. He's like, and Henry is not under the control of his mother, which is funny. He's the favorite son. He's the absolute favorite. Always been the favorite. Catherine loves him to bits. His eyes, his her life, his her heart. Like that, you have letters between them where the mother love she has for him is so strong. And I don't know why he's the favorite. He just is, because he's such a pain. He loves his mother too. He absolutely adores her. But he's absolute. You can't control him. And you see him, wait, he chose his wife. He chose Louise. Sorry, I just have a portrait. That's why I looked up. You have Louise de Lorraine-Vaudémont, and he doesn't even wait for his mother to tell him, like, we need to make an alliance. He's like, shut up. I do whatever I want.
No.
And that's why I think later on, him and Elizabeth are going to get on because of this type of personality. We do what the fuck we want. And they're both like this. And I think that's where they kind of connect. But for Catherine, so she offered Henry without really telling, without making sure that Henry would say yes, and Henry said fuck no. So it's a massacre in terms of negotiations. It doesn't last. It's like 1570, 71, and then she's like, wait, have a third son. Okay, he's not that attractive, but he's very easy. Like Francis is probably suffering from his older brother to be the favorites, and there's a lot of rivalry between the brothers. And I think he felt finally that his mother was giving him attention, and he's going to play what his mother wanted, right? Like, so she's kind of in control of him, but it's type of an emotional control. And Elizabeth is going to be like, I think she's going to get on with Francis. I think she's going to find Francis not attractive, but amusing. And easy to make him believe, and Catherine believe, to play the game yes, no. Because it's when it's 71 to 81. 81 in English sources, but until his death, 84. Like they still hope that she'll change her mind. And what's crazy is that obviously he met her in 1579, in 1581. And I do think she really enjoyed, I think they became friends. I think she really enjoyed his company. He was funny, he was charming, he was completely devoted to her. He would have been the husband, he would have been actually a good husband to her, because there's no way he would have done anything to piss her off. And he would probably have turned his back on his family, because he had so much rivalry with Henry. Now, I think he would have created a new dynamic if he had been King Consort of England. I think he would have turned his back on French interests.
Presumably by this point, children aren't on the cards at this marriage.
That's the thing. It's like, obviously, Catherine is like, keeps banging on about Elizabeth becoming a mother one day, saying that it's the thing that she hopes the most, that's, the best thing that could happen to her. But you have, obviously, she's getting older and older and older. And at one point, can really think about like having children. But all they, and it's to some extent I was like, but I was thinking it's just a thought I want to share with you guys, like but wasn't it the ultimate thing actually to keep pursuing someone who was then middle-aged, like, she's going to be in her 40s and stuff. And you know that your son is younger. So it means that if she dies, if you strike the right negotiation, the right marriage negotiation, the crown goes to France.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
Mm.
And would Elizabeth, imagine like Elizabeth would have like been like, okay, you don't want Mary Stuart to be on the throne. Yeah, might have as well like this Francis guy who's been so devoted to me. So do you see what I mean? I'm just thinking like, what is like, they must have known at some point there was no children in the cars. At some point, it's just they keep pursuing her. But let's face it, in the 1580s, like, late 1570s, it's less and less likely that she would have been able to give birth.
But presumably they would have been aware of the marriage treaty that Mary I had with Philip of Spain.
They always refer to it. Yes, but it doesn't mean they would not have been able to strike another one.
Right. And maybe if he was already been here for a few years, he's built up. And
also if he probably would have converted, because he was not a Catholic fanatic. So he would have probably converted to Protestantism, even though there were discussion of him being able to exercise his religion privately. We know that Francis become like, the Lord Protector of the Netherlands, right? So we know that he's really against like the Spanish, and for him it's not really about religion. It's really about he's choosing the Protestant side over and over again. So to a point where religion doesn't matter. Religion is just a way of like choosing your enemies and your friends. And for Catherine, it's just me wondering, were they that stupid to think that she could have children? Were they aware in their mind thinking, if we strike the right marriage negotiation, the right marriage, document, contract, could we get England? Could we get England?
Or perhaps even it would just open the door because he would be in situ and
very hard to get rid of.
An interesting thought.
I've always thought like it was a bit weird. This.
You mentioned in your book about Catherine. She sort of says to Elizabeth, "I would love to be your mother. I'd love to take on, be a mother to you." How sincere? What does she mean by that? And how sincere was she?
I would love to be in control of you.
Right. Okay.
I mean, for Catherine, you have to remember, as we said, she lost everyone when she was young, but now she became, like, because of fate, she became the matriarch of a family. You have to remember that in 1558, when her husband died, her children are young. They're like, they're all extremely young. Like, some are under 10. Like, a lot of them are under 10. So you have to. So when she said, in a way, she is sincere in terms of like, she does see herself as a mother to Elizabeth. She wants to, but she wants to because she knows that mother is at the top of it. Like she's it. So and I think for Elizabeth, she tend to forget that Elizabeth had lost her mother very young. And never some people might disagree with me, but yes, maybe with Catherine Parr, she tried to fill that void.
That went a bit wrong, though.
But I don't really think so. I think she's just playing the card she's given, and Catherine Parr is a card that gives her closer to her father, makes her life more agreeable, at court and princess again, and all of this. But I don't think Elizabeth is craving to find a new mother. I think she's, in a way, she made her peace with that. She made her peace that she didn't have one when she, she had one, but she lost her when she was 2 years old or something, or 2.5. And so I think that Catherine playing that card was not really smart. And if anything, like Elizabeth was not stupid. She knew exactly that if she married into Catherine's family, it meant that Catherine was the matriarch of the family. And Elizabeth loved power as much as Catherine did. It's not that they loved power, it's that they suffered so much in their childhood and teenage years that power was the only way for them to feel safe and to be safe.
It's also, what's the alternative?
Exactly. There's
Mm.
no, yeah, precisely.
So we'll discuss Mary Queen of Scots because she, well, she's another figure. I think her relationship and Elizabeth's relationship is looked at as if it's just the two of them, and your book opens up the fact that no, they're part of this triangle with Catherine. Now, Mary Stuart is brought up at the French court, and you've already mentioned the influence of Diana, which I was really interested in the book to that you mentioned that, and sort of I wonder how much that her upbringing, Mary's upbringing, and the influences of the women around her affected Mary Stuart's behaviours. I'm thinking in terms of her marriages after, she's back to Scotland and things. How much do you think she was affected by her upbringing in France?
Yeah. Well, I've always said that Mary Stuart is more French than Scottish. Always. She's not a Stuart. She's a Guise. And she's a Guise until the end. So, yes, there's a big influence. First of all, you have to understand that she doesn't have the same... It's quite sad in a way, because you could almost think that these three women, Catherine, Elizabeth, and Mary, have the same upbringing when you think about it. Mary also lost her dad very early on, like she's 6 days old or 8 days old. I can't remember now when she became, queen, but like 6 days, right?
Yeah.
And then you have, and then she's she's five years old, about to be 6 when she's sent to the French court, so taken away from her mother. So here you have, and I know her mother didn't die, but you have a separation, and the same with Elizabeth at 3 years old or 2.5 years old, and with Catherine, who doesn't have any of her parents. But the difference is way she was treated. Is the difference between like Elizabeth, Catherine, and Mary. Mary is treated like the golden child, like the most important thing on the planet. She's already a promise to Francis, the future Francis II. She's being brought up with the royal children. She's considered as, everyone is fond of her. She's super cute, super pretty, super, oh my God, Mary is amazing. She comes from a very, 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 very powerful family in France. Like, I mean, the Guises are princes of blood. They have a right to the French throne. We're not talking about just a noble family that is quite cute or a bit ambitious. We have a family who's been established. They're, the Duchy of Lorraine. They're absolutely very much aware of who they are and what they deserve. Right. And here they have their niece that they managed to marry to the future King of France. They know that Francis is going to be King of France one day, and that they're securing a place of Mary, so themselves so close to power. And then you have Mary, who got very close to Diane de Poitiers, because Diane de Poitiers got an interest in Mary because Henry II was really fond of Mary. He thought she was absolutely brilliant, so adorable, so pretty, so this, so that. So you have a girl who has always been told since she's 6 years old, you're the most amazing thing on the planet. And you deserve everything. And you're going to become Queen of France, and you're Queen of Scotland, and you can have it all. You can have it all. And obviously at that time, there's no England on the line, because there's going to be Mary I on the throne, and Mary I is a Catholic. So no problem whatsoever for them. Even though they're at war, because Mary I is with the Spanish, right? Like, so it's quite interesting. You're Catholic, but you're with the wrong alliance, right? The Spanish alliance, the Spanish side. But even if they're at war, there's no idea of she should not be on the throne. But when in 1558, Elizabeth became queen, and then Henry II dies, and you have Mary and Francis becoming king and queen of France. The Guises and Mary do not recognize Elizabeth as the rightful heir, the rightful queen. They think it's Mary the rightful queen, because she's also a Tudor. She has Tudor blood. Can you imagine that woman has Tudor blood, Stuart blood, the Guises blood, so Prince of blood? Like, it's very important to understand. And then she's married to the Valois dynasty. She's probably, like, she was set to be the most powerful queen that has ever lived. She had in front of her 2 other women who were not meant to be queen. who were not as powerful as her. Nothing had been given to them. They had to fight for everything they got. They had to endure. They had to suffer. They had to sacrifice everything that Mary never did. The only thing that she did was to live with her mother that she was really close to. But again, she was still put in a situation where she was, protected and safe. I mean, her uncles would have never let anything happen to her. And then you have this woman. So you have Mary Stuart, who is psychologically is on another planet. She doesn't really think I need to be smart in the way of things I think, and she doesn't really understand the games of course. She did never had to. There was always men telling her what to do and how to play it, and she was the real pawn. The Guises were, so first her uncles, then her cousins were like, Mary, you're just a pawn, just do as you're told.
Do that.
Yes, and when because at first she wanted to stay in France. Oh my God, she cried. She's like, please, Catherine, let me stay in France. No, I don't want a fucker like you here.
So Catherine decides, no way do I want Mary here.
Why? Because it means that Mary is Queen Dowager of France. It means there's two queens now.
Right.
Queen Mother, Queen Dowager. She can't have it. And also she's like, just go back to Scotland. But Mary doesn't like Scotland. Absolutely hates it.
Maybe doesn't even have memories of Scotland if she was
probably not. And also, there's a bloody reformation there, so she's gonna have to pretend she doesn't care about, that they can keep the. And she does that part of her reign. She does play it well. She does let them do whatever they want, and she keeps her faith. So on that part, I would say she plays well and safe. Then she goes back. She plays with the cards she's given as well. She's further away from her uncles and then cousins. And it's where you see she makes mistakes. She doesn't really. She's like, I'm going to marry a Stuart. It's going to give me more claim to. And they probably thought that's also very safe to play, because they have their eyes. The Guises' eyes are on the English throne and the French throne. They see Catherine as being weak, that they can, and them being princes of blood. I mean, at some point they're really going to turn against the crown, like with Henry III. They completely turn against him, and then he's left with no other choice to fight back. And it's gonna bring his own downfall. But the Guises are all behind, always bloody attacking him. But they also have their eyes on the English throne, and they think that obviously marrying a Stuart, Henry Lord Darnley, means that she has even more rights. Stuart also again, Tudor blood, more rights. Elizabeth is a bastard. She's the daughter of Anne Boleyn. No one bloody recognized the break with Rome, let alone the marriage between Henry and Anne. And when I say no one, I'm talking about Catholics. So it's even more I'm in awe of Elizabeth for putting up with so much shit for so long. It's unbelievable.
From the Catholic point of view, then, it must have been incredulous to them that Elizabeth is on the throne at all. So unlikely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's why they fight all the time to get her out. Is there, and it's where they don't really like Catherine. Catherine, even if she has friends, she's always be the foreigner. She's the Italian. She's a Medici.
Right.
She was not supposed to be queen. She was married to the second son. How the fuck that work out? It's incredible. And Mary is in my book. There's obviously some parts on Mary, because Mary is also going to be the reason why there's a huge fallout between Elizabeth and Catherine. Because at the end, also Catherine, even though she knows the Guises and stuff, Catherine always plays safe, and she plays and she thinks they need, with Henry III, and really is not going to listen to her, but she really thinks that they need to appease the Guises. She realizes how powerful they are, and they're after them. But you always need to play the long game and trying to appease things. And then if you have an opportunity to get rid of your enemies, you do. But you never confrontational or too aggressive. And Henry is like, I've had enough. I fucking don't care. I'm going to be the way I want to be. And so you have Catherine being like, who also is shocked by Elizabeth. She's also very annoyed. You have to understand that Elizabeth has played her for years with marriage negotiations. She doesn't really like that. And when there's no sons anymore to put forward, she's like, who the fuck is that woman who thinks she can rule on her own?
So she can look back on it all and think,
exactly, and be more powerful than me, more powerful than anyone. And then Elizabeth did the thing that no one would have ever thought she would do. What do you think Mary, with the help of her family in France, the Guises, kept plotting against Elizabeth? They really thought that she's never going to execute her. Yes, she's in prison, but she's never going to execute her. She's never has done that before. It's never going to happen. You have to think that you're above every other kings and queens. She's never going to do that. Man, she did it. Like, wow. And for Catherine, it's also like, oh my God, she's a monster. She went too far.
So that was Catherine's view of that. That's just...
Yes, absolutely. But for Catherine, it was also, what the fuck are you doing? You're putting me in such a bad situation at home because the Guises are now going to grow more in power. What do they need? They need Spain help. And more Spain help. So that there's an alliance between Spain and the Guises. And Catherine's like, my God, we're in a civil war. It's getting a massive shit show.
Because of something that's going on in a different country.
And she didn't see the end of the Valois because she died in January 1589 and Henry III is assassinated in August 1589. Can you imagine, like, having suffered so many humiliations to get children on earth, and you secure like you have 10 children, 7 of them are adults. In your head you've bloody secured,
done it, yeah.
Line. But then your children don't have children. Well, Charles has a daughter. She dies when she's 6. Shit. But Henry and Louise de Lorraine-Vaudémont had a pregnancy early on, but she had a miscarriage, and we think that after that miscarriage something went wrong, and that's why she couldn't have children anymore. We don't really we think Henry never had Henry III was the most faithful king. He's still sleeping around, but he doesn't have official mistresses. And he's very quiet about them. That's why there's a reputation of him being homosexual by his detractors, because like he's very quiet. He doesn't want to hurt his wife's feelings, so he's very, very quiet about his mistresses. He never has one that he prefers. He just sleeps around. But he had children. Like we know that he had some of these women had children. They just didn't. The children didn't grow up. Like they died in infancy and stuff. But what we know is that Henry could have children, and Louise de Lorraine was probably the one. Like she had a pregnancy, had a miscarriage, so like something went wrong and couldn't have children after that. But there's still hope because they're still young. There's still hope that before he's assassinated, there's still hope that it will happen. But you have Catherine like working so hard for all of this, and then her dynasty, the dynasty into she married into, and all the children dying.
Her life is just punctuated by those close to her dying. It's just
death after death after death.
Incredibly sad.
When she lost Charles IX, it's awful. And she lost Francis, awful. She lost Elizabeth of Valois, awful. But then she's extremely close to. She lost Christine, but Claude, and then Claude had a daughter, Christine, and Christine is a granddaughter that she raised like a daughter, and she marries her in the Italian families, like a duchy. And at her death in the will, she gave a lot of lands, and she does give Chenonceau to Louise de Lorraine-Vaudémont, which is a massive talking of affection, of a love for that woman, which is funny because she didn't want Henry to marry her, and in the end, I think she really liked her. And it's just brilliant because sometimes I think we tend to, we see words, we see names, we see dates, we see facts. There's a war, there's this and that. This one died in 1574. This one died in 1584. This, and whatever. And you tend to forget when you say this man died, he was the son of someone. He was the husband of someone. He was the father of someone. And when you really look at Catherine's life, it is marked by death. And I think through that, once you look at that this way, it's where you can be like, I understand her. I think I can understand her. Just to make sense.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And your book, like I say, I think it's going to introduce, well, you've certainly introduced Catherine de Medici to me in a much bigger way than I'd ever looked at her. And I think that's what your book is going to do for Catherine. You know, you're going to introduce her to people who love Elizabeth. And I think she deserves it. She deserves to be much better known.
I think so. And the relationship as well. I think it's interesting because I do think about, I like teasing her. Was she the biggest rival? It depends how you define a rival. And also I think it's interesting I love the fact that their relationship is so complex. It's not just rivalry, it's not just animosity, it's so much more complex. And they tried at times to be friends and it was a fiasco. So
but didn't you mention again in the book of French, one of the ambassadors from France who obviously meets both women who never meet in real life, and he thinks that actually if they could have got together, they probably would have been.
I love that. I think he's absolutely right. I think they would have liked each other very much so, and I think especially if they could have bonded in a not in an official capacity. But if they could have had time, like maybe because they both loved hunting, so having a hunting party where the two of them could go, and they would have shared probably in some stuff. And don't forget as well that Catherine de Medici knew the stories about Anne Boleyn when she was in France. And so, she was friends with Renée de France, so the daughter of Louis XII and the sister of Claude de France, so the wife of Francis I until 1524. And Renée de France shared stories about Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn, with Catherine de Medici. So like I don't know what they said, right? All I know is I think it's really interesting. And I think they would have shared things. They would have realized that they were very similar women. And they have much more in common than, for example, I really can't see. I think if Mary and Elizabeth would have met, I think it would have, some people are like, would you think they would have, avoided all the things? Do you think they would have bonded? I don't think so. I think Mary was an entitled bitch. I'm sorry, but I really do believe so. And not really because of her, but because the way she was raised. I think if everyone keeps telling you the best, the most beautiful, the most this, the most this,
we've met them. We've all met one.
And at some point you start thinking that way, and you start shitting on other people. I mean, how bloody ridiculous it is for Mary to shit on Elizabeth for over a decade and then say, oh, by the way, in 1569, I'm a bit in a shitty situation here. Can I come to your country? Fuck off. Like,
well, she continues even when she's here.
Exactly. But there's also there are some reasons about Mary why she continues, because she really believes that she's the rightful queen. She doesn't think she's the rightful heir. She thinks she's the rightful queen. And she thinks that she should be on the throne of England, which is a better throne than Scotland. She never liked Scotland. So when I see the Scottish people being, oh, Mary Queen of Scotland, when I see
she wasn't that bothered about you.
Oh, Mary Queen of Scots movie. What on earth? You given her like a Scottish accent? How?
Well, then they all lived in caves. Did you notice that in Scotland they all live in caves?
I know, and it's ridiculous, and it's not making any. It's not. Scottish history is so interesting, and the Scottish court, and in a way they're more free. There's something about them that is like they have free spirits, and I love that. And you don't come across it's the same. The story of James was going to become James I of England, James VI of Scotland, but his story is so fascinating because he's kidnapped. He does play the card is given. He's much smarter than his mother in so many ways. And then he got what he wanted in the end. He got Elizabeth making him. She didn't. Of course, she was going to like. I mean, I think it's a brilliant. I think that's why it's such a period that is so fascinating, because we have so many big characters with different personalities, and
Yeah.
it's brilliant to go through their own words and looking at the type of people they were. And that's my point of view on Mary. And I know so many disagree and so many see her differently. And please do reach out to me, because I don't mind I don't mind debating, and I don't mind also maybe being proved wrong. So far, I really don't think I am, mostly because I've read most of the letters in French, and I can tell you that you would have to really wake up early before making me change my mind on American Scots. But I still love the idea that we can discuss it respectfully and respectfully disagree.
Yes, absolutely.
But there are truths to Mary suffering. I do understand that at the end, being in prison for so long, that she's going to give in into, some sorts of plots, but she always had. So that's a problem with Mary. I think she could have made much smarter moves. And I wish she hadn't been is poisoned by Diane de Poitiers, by the Guises. I wish she had made up her mind for herself, and not antagonizing Catherine from early on. Why? There's no need to do that. This need of always choosing a woman over another. She chose Diane. Well, wrong horse, right? It was not really smart. Really, really not smart.
I'll ask you one last question then before we wrap up the main part of the interview, and then we'll go on to the questions that my patrons have asked. But what was Elizabeth's reaction when Catherine dies? Do we know?
We will never know. So I found a letter that she wrote to Henry III, and this letter is fascinating because she crossed a lot of lines. So everything that she said are very nice, very sentimental. It's crossed. The letter is still sent, so I felt like it's almost like you can read it.
Yeah.
I think Elizabeth respected Catherine. I think she had massive respect for what she tried to do, for the way she protected her family, her dynasty, her crown. When I say her, it's her sons. And I think she is sad that it happened that way. But it also marked the fact that she no longer has female rivals at all. Her biggest enemy then becomes Philip II. And it's very clear, because Mary of Scots is gone, Catherine is gone. There's only the Guises, but Henry took care of one. It's basically the part of the reign where it's the outright animosity between England and Spain. It's where England became also more powerful, making choices that were going to lead to an empire, right? And it's the competition with Spain that is driving all of this.
So before we finish the main part of the interview, where can people find more about you? Where's best on social media to contact you, and where can they get your book?
Yeah, so you can contact me on Twitter, Dr. Estelle Paranque. But if you type my name, honestly, you will find me. And my book, you can find it anywhere, Waterstones, Amazon, obviously. I know some people don't like, but you have Fox Lane Books, you have Goldsboro Books if you like, independent indie bookshops. But you can find it probably anywhere, Blackwell's, Falls, whichever you want. If you want a signed copy, it's going to be Fox Lane Books and Goldsboro Books. I'm also going to do festivals, so if you want to come with a copy for me to sign it, so I'm going to be at Winchester, Warwick, Wigtown, near the border in Scotland,
fantastic.
Scotland. And I'm doing a talk at Waterstones, Cambridge, with Dr. Joanne Paul, so the House of Dudley, and talking about my two queens. So please come and meet. I'm sure there will be more events anywhere, but please come and meet me and discuss things. I'm a lover of history, first and foremost, and I'm always welcome to meet other lovers of history.
Fantastic. I'm so glad the festivals are all back up and running, so I'm going to try and get to at least one where you're at in the autumn, so that we can meet in person.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining me today.